Hello and welcome to the Create Connects webinar, funding information session for culturally and linguistically diverse people and communities. My name is Ian Cifuentes from the Arts Funding and Development team at Create New South Wales, and I'll be your facilitator today. Next slide. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're all gathering on today. Create New South Wales acknowledges the Aboriginal people across the state and their continued connection to their lands, waters, and culture. We respect elders past and present and the role that Aboriginal artists play in contributing to their culture. I would like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I am meeting you on, the beautiful lands of the Bidjigal people, and I would like to pay my respects and acknowledge elders past, present, and future, and extend this warm respect to the First Nations peoples joining us today. Next slide. So today we'll be just doing an overview of the Create New South Wales funding opportunities and guidelines. We'll also go through some hints on how to write a strong application with a focus on selection criteria, and to hear from two successful applicants with a focus on key priority areas. Next slide, please. So today we're joined by two incredible artists who are recent successful recipients from the Arts and Cultural Funding Program, Round 2, Lucky and Nuala, who will be sharing some tips on how to make a strong and compelling application to Create New South Wales Arts and Cultural Funding Program. I wanted to ask before we move to the next slide, if you can share with us just like a little bit about your current investigation. So, Nuala, if we can start with you.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Hello everyone. I'd also just like to quickly acknowledge that I'm on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So my application was put in on behalf of the organisation for which I work, which is for a Centre for Contemporary Asian Art, which is based in the Haymarket. And we are developing an international queer exchange program, particularly looking or starting to develop a framework for that international exchange. And the first iteration of the project will look at my cultural background. So my dad's Anglo-Indian and my mum's Northern Irish, but I was born in Brisbane. And yeah, I guess through lockdown, I was living in close proximity to some other artists, and we realized that we have, or I have, a similar family heritage to one of our neighbours. Basically, both of our families did this trek out of Burma in 1942, just towards the end of the World War, to escape like the Japanese invasion. And we're sort of using that as a locator, a geographical locator, to look at queer diaspora, queer signalling, queering the journey. And those are the three sort of aspects we're looking at, but looking to connect with diaspora here in Australia, and then doing some research into our family histories to then develop this framework. So the funding that we received was actually just to develop that idea, and the outcomes are sort of around the framework. So that.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the
no,
project.
that's awesome. I think what we'll do is we'll go into a little bit deeper and dig a little bit deeper in some more details later. But I'd like to throw it to you, Lucky, just to give us just a bit of uh, what you're working on, a little bit about you, but also, yeah, just a little bit about like your current investigation.
Hi, my name is Lucky Lartey, and I'm originally from Ghana. I've been in Australia and living in Sydney for the last 11 years. I pay my respect to the traditional owners of the land. I'm calling from Gadigal land. In terms of the project that I'm exploring, which is called Two-Face, so I call it Sankofa Moving Architecture and also Black Lux. This is a dance and film research. It's been going on for about 2.5 years. The idea was sort of developed over, throughout lockdown, but I was really interested in sort of body's relationship with space and how our body sort of holds knowledge and information. And this work is inspired by a village in Burkina Faso, which is next door, which is like on the northern part of Ghana. It's a neighbors between Ghana and Burkina Faso. It's a village called Tilbury. It's been existent for since 15th century. And when you enter into a village, just by the size of a door or a window or a color or anything embedded, the painting on the building, you know who lived there, the history of the people. So the village is actually kind of like the living canvas of the society. So this is sort of my research, but what I'm trying to do with it is sort of look at how I create this sort of new language out of it. So that led me to this name, which is called Sankofa. And the Sankofa is an African proverb, which means uh, in order to be able to understand the future better, it's important to understand the past so you can understand the future better. So these are sort of the two main things that have sort of guided me, and what I'm hoping to achieve. It's my background is dance and choreography, but throughout lockdown, I've developed a visual art practice, and I'm also really interested in film. So I've been working a lot, exploring sort of idea around perspectives and how sort of film or the body in relationship with space can challenge how we see and experience things. So yeah, it's sort of these two things that I've got in terms of the practice. I'm really interested in perspectives. So it's not limited to just movement. It's with space. It's with object. It's with props. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's amazing. No, thanks for sharing that with us. And yeah, we'll come back and delve in a little bit deeper in some of those areas. I wanted to move it to go to the next slide, and it's great because I just wanted to touch on the funding categories that Create New South Wales has currently. So there's a creative career projects, there's project funding for individuals and groups. There's also organisation funding, which includes local government authorities, so where you can apply for projects or annual program funding. And there's also the round that's currently open, this is the small projects quick response grant. So the guidelines and application forms have been simplified for this financial year. So for more information and things that you wanted to just find more about, just jump on the Create New South Wales website to check. Just check those guidelines and just please read through them before you apply. Next slide, please. And wanted to just share with you a quick snapshot of just the last round, so round two. So there was a total number of 300 applications that Create New South Wales received. Total projects funded were 122 at just over 4 million across all art forms. 70 organizations were funded, 52 individual and group projects were funded. Next slide, please. And I wanted to go through as well, just before you start the application, just making sure of a couple of things. So just make sure you read the relevant arts and cultural funding program guidelines. Check that you've met the eligibility requirements. Ensure that the program is the right fit for you, just by reviewing whether the relevant round objectives align with the aims of your project or your program. Review the additional resources and fact sheets available to help with your application, and allow enough time to complete your application thoroughly and accurately. And that includes the sourcing the support materials. I wanted to throw over to you, Nuala, maybe just any tips before starting a grant application?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many, but yes, definitely reading the guidelines.
Yeah,
Look, I think, yeah, having a think about who you're partnering, how you're building your project to be something worth funding. Sort of what is the reach of the project? So really thinking about who's involved. I think that's a really key thing to think about at the very start. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Lucky, is there anything that you, just before starting an application, that went through your mind?
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of read the guideline and see if you're eligible, because I think we always want to we're excited when we see that something is available that we can apply. That often we don't read all the uh, selection criteria, so it's important that you see that you're suitable for that before you apply. And like I always say, from when you think of your idea, you have to think, okay, where is this gonna go? And that's gonna help you identify who you want to collaborate with, who you want to bring on board, and where the work will be. Because it, you have to think, how do you stand out when you're applying application? So thinking of these lines helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
And also
that's
just reach out to you guys to have a conversation. I often call the office just to, chat about the project. Yeah.
definitely, yeah. No, great point, and thanks, Nola, that and Lucky. So, I was thinking a couple of things about the application process because the guidelines now are trying to simplified. Just go into the system. So the system is called Smarty Grants, and just to create, just do the application, open it up, and just familiarize yourself with the system. That can be something that if you just wanted to have a bit of time just jumping around and seeing, getting used to that kind of, if you haven't used it before, using that system just to kind of know where things are and that kind of thing. The other option that's available is being able to download a PDF of the form. So you can download a copy and print it out. That way you can sort of write and prepare your answers off that. Um, but yeah, again, like you mentioned that, the support material is very important and research, having a look at what's been kind of funded in the past. There is a resource page on the Create New South Wales website that shows the recipients from previous rounds. So if there's anything else, it's, yeah, like just give a call out to Create New South Wales and we'll be able to help.
Mm. Just on that as well, very rarely would I write directly into the form online. So I would even pull the questions out into a Word document and just, start chipping away, writing the answers into that, and then I copy and paste, when they're ready and put them in the form. Just gives you a bit more ease with writing and editing. Yeah.
Definitely. Thanks, Nola. Next slide. So when addressing there's addressing the three assessment criteria in the application form. Those three is merit, impact, and viability. So these assessment criteria are what the assessors use to judge and assess the application. So just wanted to point out a few things here. Just when responding to the criteria, just keep your responses, just kind of tell the story, tell it about what the project and the work is. It's really good to use plain language. You can use dot points. Dot points are okay. Also thinking about what do you want the grant and why do you need the grant. So having like a clear purpose. How does your work or your project contribute to your practice and the arts ecology? Again, like I previously mentioned, just having strong support material, having good images, and don't assume the assessors know you and know your work. So being able to really put as much information in there to to avoid assumption, just using very simple language. And the last point there is just being able to provide a balanced budget. So next slide, please. I wanted to just go a little bit deeper into those different areas, the merit, the impact, and viability. And I thought it'd be great to bring you on board, Nuala and Lucky, just in terms of a couple of questions around maybe we can start with the merit, and maybe I'll start with you, Lucky. Just, can you provide like any hints or how to best describe a project with the focus on presenting and attention-grabbing rationale? Um, it's kind of a big question, but if there's anything that you can talk to or provide us, express how a project contributes to a chosen art form.
This is the most hard one. It took me a long time to get my head around because I come from a training where your practice is not so much about like your practice about the repertoire, the history, the knowledge, and you pass it on. Where what I start to do was how do I find my own voice within my tradition. So this is a different way of how I've been trained. So in coming to Australia, I'm like, why do they have to ask me why? Why do they have to ask me how? And I'm like, the question is the same: why, how, when, we. Like, why is this so important? But I think in being able to just look at the criteria and typing this, it helps a lot to articulate what you want to do, and I think what I do it's that when I start to have an idea, I record a lot on a video, I record the voices, and I talk to a lot of people on my idea. So each time I talk to people, I find new words because it's very important to find the right words to describe well, you talk to someone and they give you a whole description. And I also do a lot of research paper in terms of like if I want. Yeah, I think what we undermine is that there's so much study around anything you think of in the world, and it's important if you're interested in like create project, architecture, anything, and you type that on Google. I often do that, and then you find so much research papers, and just even reading about them helps you find the right words and stuff. And I also have a producer. Actually, she put the application. So what I do is think of the idea because I don't think of an idea in relation to applying for a grant. I can never do that. I think of an idea first. That's my research. I do all of that. Then, once I've kind of developed a sort of a little draft for myself about this is what I'm interested in exploring, and then I'll look for a grant to sort of apply to support that. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Nuala?
Yeah, I think just flowing on from Lucky there, like bolstering your team as well. Like you said, you got a producer on board. Like that kind of assistance can really just uplift an application so strongly. And again, you're applying for money, so you can build in, fees for those kind of people to help you. But yeah, I think. I think really using plain language. I think the first sort of question around the project's vision, that's an opportunity to really, I just give background and the background of the research, how long the project's been going for, how long I've been thinking about this for, and who I'm going to engage and how that's sort of a broader vision. But then what are the objectives and how do they demonstrate excellence? That kind of question is more about thinking about the qualitative and quantitative ways in which you're going to approach the work. So there can be anything from, so two examples of, qualitative versus quantitative. Quantitative might be like, this project will engage, 3 artists full-time for 4 weeks, versus, throughout this project, we will develop an understanding of queerness and queer survival through diaspora journeys. That those two are sort of very different objectives, but they they all speak to that, to what the project will achieve, or like what the kind of processes we'll put in place to ensure we can deliver the project. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I thought what might be interesting, sorry, is how do you approach in terms of merit? Like, how do you approach in describing your practice
Mm.
in terms of the question, if there was kind of any support material, things that kind of that you included or provided, or to be able to back any of those kinds of things?
Mm. One thing that I think is really good to start thinking about, and as you do more grants, you'll understand how to kind of gather this sort of um, depth and breadth of things that describe your practice. So anything from like, and Lucky, you would experience this as well, but like really quality video recordings of your rehearsals or your movement or whatever it might be, alongside maybe some research papers. So it can be anything in PDF form, also alongside support materials. So giving the assessors, I suppose, a broad range of things they're able to look at. It could even be still images on paper. But yeah, just, I think you mentioned before dot points, but just also remembering that the assessors are reading, I think it was like you said, 300 applications before. They're reading a lot of applications. So making it easy for them to see and identify the vision you're trying to get across. I also use headings a lot when I'm writing, and that sort of allows me to speak to those, and at a glance you can see the way that you're tackling the question through those. But yeah, I think just a broad range of media is really a good approach.
Yeah, oh, awesome. And Lucky, in terms of impact, because on one of the criteria is impact,
Mm.
uh, can you share with just how you described the outcome of your project?
Um, I think I always say every strong application is the application that I've got some history. So um, I do a lot of free work, which is really spending the time researching, documenting every little opportunity I have with students, even that I'm doing class with. I experiment some of the ideas on them. So I'm always documenting. So it's very important to sort of give yourself that play time to gather that support material, because that will sort of that will help how do you call it, um, that will help the vision of, sort of the people reading the application the support material helps a lot to sort of articulate your idea. And I think also for me, because English is not my first language, I find I tend to images a lot, and videos and movies and stuff to support what I'm trying to describe. Um, so yeah, it's very important. But the best tip is that you don't go to create um, with your fresh 1 2 weeks idea, just thinking of of the application, because you wouldn't have enough to show or to support your application. It's good to be able to give yourself the time to explore and to research and find the right tools that can support your argument, I would say. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, amazing. Nuala, just in terms of how you talked about qualitative and quantitative, that,
Mm.
yeah, do you have anything you wanted to add in terms of sharing how you describe the outcome of the project? It could be the engagement, audience numbers, the inclusion
Yeah.
strategies.
Yeah, I think it can be a tricky one. I think always it's always best to do or to articulate something that you think is within your means. So even if it's something like, very simply, we'll conduct a debrief with our team. That's such a simple one, but it's amazing in a way to articulate that, because it does make you, in your application, because it does make you think, actually, that's a really important step to take, especially when we're exploring, quite complex histories and narratives, that kind of things. And I suppose if you're able to articulate things like doing an audience survey, or seeking peer reviews from your peers. They don't have to be long, but if you think about that at the start when you're actually applying for the grant, it's something that then you can build in from the start when you actually do get the grant and you actually start to do the project. You can build it into your contracts with your artists, or however you run your project. But you can say, at the end of this project, we'll be conducting a debrief, and we'll be looking for a short review or a short statement from you about how you found the project. Those kind of things, I think, can be quite simple. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. I wanted to move on to the next criteria, which is the viability. And one thing that would be great to hear from both of you is just any tips, or any tips of preparing a strong budget, or in terms of how did you approach the budget, the things that you thought about, because if it's a break-even budget, if there's other income, how you think about income as in-kind support. Also, things kind of like, how did you articulate? How did you calculate artist fees? That kind of thing. Nuala, do you want to start?
Yeah. So I just make sure that I'm always using an award rate. And so for 4A, we use the NAVA award rate, which is roughly 1,200 a week. And so in that, I often think about the budget, thinking about the project, how many weeks is this project going to take me? And so then is it, I'm employing this artist for 4 weeks part-time, and so then you calculate their fee on that. Always just making sure I'm including super for artists, which is now 10.5%, and making sure that those sums are adding up. I often build my budget, again, not in the template provided. I build it separately and then I put it in, because I find like it's more workable that way. Also, not to mess with the sums that already exist in the create template. What else? I mean, the budget should always tell the story. So, I had an example before I was thinking about, which is if you're planning on flying an interstate or an international artist in, and you want the budget to pay for their flights and accommodation, just to make sure you've spoken to that international collaboration or that national collaboration within the application, so that it doesn't become a surprise when the assessors open that up. It should just tell the story the whole way through. I always aim for a break-even budget, because I think that is no one's making money from these. It is true and correct to have a break-even budget. Just to really think again about those partnerships, what in-kind or financial support can you confirm at the time you're putting in the application? So if you've got a confirmed in-kind venue hire, or you're doing a residency and there's a $2,000 fee attached to that, plus you're applying for this money to bolster that, just making sure that that's all in there as well. And those kinds of things can actually make the sort of co-investment from outside, again, it sort of makes the application feel more meaty and, worthy of funding. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Lucky?
Just to add, I think it's important for us to pay ourselves. So it's like properly putting a budget which sort of shows that you're not working for free. And just to add to Nola, so I think I work with the MEA rate, so it's so that it's important to and there is a lot of things online to help you pay yourself and your collaborators very well. it's also in terms of in kind to be able to like articulate, the amount of time you put in already, or you'll be putting in by yourself, because it's that helps a lot also for you to be able to ensure that you've invest some of your own time, even some of your time in the budget. Yeah, that's all I'll say. Um,
Yeah, and
No,
in kind can also be in kind use of gear or instruments or things that you already have that you'll be using. Yeah, those kind of things really bolster that.
Yeah,
yeah,
I I also think space is quite important, because space is is very expensive, and so like with this project we're doing, we have a partner on board, and they're giving us free space, and as much 100 hours or 150 hours, but in return I give a class to their school, and that's a great. So it's also good to look out um, for where you can trade your sort of craft. Yeah.
definitely, definitely. That's a good tip. Yeah. So, next slide, please. I'll quickly talk about the key priorities. That's also uh, part of the assessment. In terms of the assessment process, look, there is the priority areas are considered at the final stages of the assessment. So there, Create New South Wales has key priority areas. So you just need to provide details on the engagement and provide letters of confirmation, support, or endorsement. Engagement with a priority area is not compulsory, but I thought it would be nice to hear from you, Lucky and Nuala, just in terms of how you approached the priority areas when you were filling out the application. Um, Maybe you start with you, Nuala.
Yeah, I'm actually just looking back. I've got my screen there. Yeah, look, I think we were really lucky with this project in that it really does connect with a lot of the priority areas. Obviously, 4A is CALD-led organisation, so we were able to speak to that really well. Um, and yeah, we're connecting with communities that are regional as well, so that was also another positive um, thing that we could write about. Um, and yeah, I guess yeah, for me the priority areas are really also about the again coming back to that mission and vision in which you're approaching your project. So um, if there's an audience development plan to connect with some of those priorities as well, that can be another way around attacking that. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Nola. Lucky?
Um, I guess with especially with this project, we're involving a lot of I'm from Africa, so I fall within the cultural linguistic background, and I was also working with a lot of diverse artists. I was also really part of my research is really interested in this sort of hierarchies of skin tone in relation to sort of the video camera, and how it relate what is visible, what's not visible. So it all sort of fall within that area. I was also sort of working with people from Western Sydney as well. Um, yeah, so I think and it's also it's also really a very new area for me in terms of my practice of really crossing sort of dance and film and visual art. So it's sort of a new area that I'm exploring, but find first and foremost also this because I have a track record of creative supporters through the quick response. So we also have history there. So it was good to continue that history as well.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, excellent. I thought we'll go, so next slide, please. I thought we'd sort of touch on things we've already sort of discussed and maybe just put a little bit more focus on, and it's around support material. And just sort of in terms of what's required, you are required to support relevant and current letters of support and or
Mm.
confirmation letters from partners or supporters and or collaborators as part of your application. And the letters should really champion or aim to champion you as an artist or as a group or as an organization and to the project or the program you're doing. And for the actual form, there's up to 5 documents that can be uploaded in this section. But I wanted to just ask both of you, so maybe Lucky, I'll start with you. Just
Mhm.
the types of support, what types of support material did you include? I know you mentioned video and photos, but was there anything kind of, were you thinking about something in terms of, were you making sure that it was specific to what you were doing with the project? And what kinds of, how did you approach that?
Yeah, I think because this work I've got a history of 2.5 years. What I did best was to start my support materials from forward to back. So the
Yeah,
last residence we did, the material that we got was the beginning, and then it shows the tragedy of like, where it's all like beginning to the end. You start from end to the beginning of to the beginning of where the actual ideas from. So I have a heaps of materials from the latest research and discovery, which is really about um, using the UV lights and black lights to explore sort of perspectives, objects, bodies, relationship with space, sustaining things, revealing things. So it was start from there, and then it went into a research that I've did with Fringe, which is like using black and white contrast space and working a lot around perspective. And then some of the things that I've done just solo, going to nature and creating sort of cubic buildings and stuff in the middle of trees. So I have all those videos, and then it went on to just me playing around with classes that I had, opportunity that I had to run classes with companies and exploring, experimenting these ideas. And so I have all this video, and then to the very end, which is like I start this idea with a colleague of mine back in Ghana. So those videos were there as well. So it shows a whole track record of that. I also included a video and footages of the village that I'm the is where the inspiration is from. It's a very interesting sort of architecture with interesting geometrical patterns. So I include some of those videos. But what I did was also got the footage and shot, play with the images the way I wanted to interpret it or what I wanted to achieve with it. Um, so that was there. And but also the outcome of this was to present at Fringe Festival. So we had a very strong support letter from them. And the idea was also to, after this work is developed, to present in UK, we have a support letter. Um, Also, since lockdown, work on screen become very important. So making a digital version of a work, which we also was also a very strong part of this work to create a short film. So we have a lot of yeah. So we have support materials from to show all of this.
yeah. Excellent. Nuala, how did
Yeah.
you, I know we kind of touched on it, those kind of things you mentioned, but
Yeah.
if there's anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think Lucky's right. Just like bringing the assessor into the world through the visuals. So it can be, yeah, anything from any stage of the development of the idea, but
Mm,
just that it communicates it in a different way that's not the writing, which I think is really important.
yeah.
Um,
Was there any
yeah.
kind of difficulty or was there time that you needed to kind of actually go through and go and think about what support material would be the strongest in terms of maybe images or video? Because
Yeah.
you'd have like so much to access and choose from.
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. Just collating those bios and headshots from people was one of the difficulties. And yeah, like I said, writing those letters of support and actually, after a while, you can get into a bit of a rhythm about how a great letter of support can be written, and what it kind of entails. One of the things that we put into our application was just a screen capture of the map of the trek in Burma that we're thinking about, and I think that was a really great visual, similar to the way Lucky was talking about the pictures from the town that you're looking at. Lucky, like it's a really great locator to where you're looking at, and just how much land and the expanse of the geography that we're looking at. So yeah, that was quite an interesting one to go, oh, actually that will be good. So yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks. Really appreciate you guys sharing that because it's quite a lot and there's a lot involved in putting the application together. Next slide, please. I thought I'd take this time just to quickly mention that there is an art form advisory board. So I just wanted to give a quick explanation of what is an art form advisory board. And so Create New South Wales, so the art form advisory board members are leading arts and cultural practitioners, including professional artists, producers, business managers, and independent company leaders selected by expression of interest, which is held annually. The purpose of the Art Form Advisory Board is to assess all applications made to the Arts and Cultural Funding Program, to provide recommendations and advise the Minister on strategic directions for the sector. So in your application, you'll be asked which Art Form Advisory Board would you like your application to be assessed by. Your choice should be based on the main art form of your project or your program that you're proposing to deliver. So if your project or program involves more than one main art form, you can think about the context in which the project will be taking place, like who the audience is or what you're best known for. So there are 10 art form advisory boards. Uh, More information can be found on the website, but I can quickly just mention them. So the first one is Aboriginal Arts and Culture Board. There's a Classical Music, Opera and Choral Board. There's a Contemporary Music Board, a Dance and Physical Theatre. There's a Festivals Board, Literature, Multi-Arts, Museums and History, Theatre and Musical Theatre, and a Visual Arts Board. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about, at the beginning of this, we were talking with each of you, and Lucky, maybe I would like to just kick it off with you. We were talking a little bit about what you were working on, but I thought this would be a good moment just to talk more about your recently funded project in terms of just sharing with us just maybe a little bit more. Maybe it could be something like how did you approach the application? Were there things that were really difficult when you were putting it together? What kind of pressure points in the application that you had to overcome to be able to finish the application and submit it. So uh, yeah, it'd be great to kind of hear those kinds of things.
I think with this specific idea and application, what I was looking at, the most important was that over the 2 years, I've, um, I've the idea started from one place, which is the architecture, but then it then developed into a film. So I was able to work with an animation artist and a photographer and a lighting designer. So then the work was sitting between something on screen and then a live performance. And so the main purpose was how do we bring I think the most difficult thing was to be able to find the right word to separate the two, that okay, so this is actually meant, this could be for screen, or this is for screen, and then the live performance. So that was the most difficult thing, which took a long time to sort of find the right way and to be able to separate the two works. Not just separate two works, but how to identify that they are two different works, uh, threaded by one sort of inspired from one place. uh, it can become like this, and it can also sit on its own. And then I think the last one was being able to find the support materials. Like we have venue partners, which was great, but then there was a lot of materials that we didn't get hold of because we're trying to find the right place we can film this, where the right place we can shoot this way, because when you're working with black lights, you need a completely dark space. And um, yeah, so some of the most difficult things to be able to identify where this work would sit. Even now, we're still trying to find, okay, what is the outcome of this film, and where do we want it to go in terms of the outcome. Is it going to be in galleries? Is it going to be in film festivals? Is it going to be part of a live show? So identify these things. So one thing I say is to giving yourself enough time to be able to identify all of this. And if you don't give yourself enough time, you'll not be able to properly articulate these or identify these things. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Thanks, Lucky. That's really great. Nuala, kind of
Yeah.
next slide, please. Sorry. Oh, yeah. He was kind of talking about, your project, but if there's anything else you wanted to add, maybe about the preparation of the application, how did you find the
Mm.
process, the experience, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think as an organisation as well, we 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 know when the applications are coming up, so we know that there's around, I think, end of January, around now, August. So we sort of we build to those deadlines throughout the year. So in January, we're thinking about, that's a tough one because you're coming off end of year holidays. But
Mm.
we're thinking about what's going into that end of January one. And after that goes in, we're thinking, okay, well, what are the projects that are coming up that might be suitable for the next one? So we're already thinking about the cycle of those rounds, which means that we're having key conversations with partners. We're doing more research that's building that kind of support material base, and like Lucky said, like the language around being able to articulate what it is. Yeah, it takes months sometimes. So yeah, that is how we approach it as a whole. But yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else? It can, I think just to articulate as well, like it can appear really daunting, but just coming back to those things around plain language, dot points, headings, those things really help in articulating what it is. Big blocks of text become kind of unwieldy, and you can lose yourself in what you're actually trying to articulate. Um,
Mhm.
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely. No, that's great. We can go to the next slide. And kind of just to wrap up, I thought it would be really, really great. And we were kind of talking about this earlier before we're, we were discussing. Just any kind of last tips or anything that you think would really be helpful to an applicant, or something that you might have wanted to have heard or wish you'd known before getting yourself into all of this, or maybe something that would just be super helpful for someone to understand when they're doing it. There's kind of a lot of different things, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe Nuala, did you want to start just in terms of, maybe having someone proofread the application, that kind of things?
Yeah, having someone proofread. One of the things I did in the application was to connect um, with people who weren't necessarily going to be partners, particularly on this application, but could speak to the conversations that we'd had, could speak to my practice, and write a letter that kind of spoke to the promise of the rigor, if that makes sense. Um, And we ended up deciding to put together a curatorial advisory panel, which actually allowed us to draw on their strong track records, but to bring in this kind of knowledge base. So I've done this multiple times in applications where I've been like, oh, okay, well, here's the idea. We've got the presentation partner, we've got the development partner. Actually, I'm going to get, because I think you sort of also know within yourself what you feel, what's your knowledge base that you know, and what maybe you don't know. Like the unknown unknowns is probably the most difficult part of this. So if you know you have unknown unknowns, reaching out and connecting with someone who may be able to help you discover what those are. So building in a mentor, building in a producer, like Lucky said, bolstering the application with others who can help you deliver it, because you're applying for a sum of money that's public money. The assessors want to know that you know how to spend it in a really considered way. So yeah, those are my kind of wrap up notes.
They're brilliant. Lucky?
Well, I say if you're not successful, keep applying. That's the
Yeah.
most big one
Yeah.
because if no one know you, people need to know you a little bit, and so uh, it's important to sort of don't get this how do you call it? Don't get this. How do you say the word today? My
Discouraged?
don't get discouraged. Yeah. Budget is very important also because the budget can really throw your work off if you don't do it very well, and it's important to know that um, you account the money very, the money are going to the right places. Um, I think partners and collaboration is quite important in this work, and I'll say with this work, we were very lucky. I was very lucky that everything happened very organic because we've been talking about this for a very long time. We applied for Fringe, and then end up to be in and got cancelled, and then uh, um, also, we got partners in the UK that we've been having a chat about this right from the beginning of the work, even without knowing we're going to apply for this application in future. So it's sort of organically build its own sort of history. And so it's important to think that how can you build that in your application? Um, yeah, so
Oh,
I think
amazing.
offer feedback sessions as well. So if you're unsuccessful, just following up on what Lucky said, like just reach out and have a conversation about what you could have done better, and keep trying.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, if is there any last points that you guys wanted to share before we close off? It's all good.
um,
No pressure.
I think maybe when you documenting your work, because this is the hardest thing sometimes, it's like you put your material so much everywhere. And I know for me as a dancer, we often do that. That's sometimes hard to find things. And so each time you finish a project, I think it's important to spend some time to put them together. Even if you drop them on YouTube or Vimeo, even if it's private, then you know it's there. And you can go and look for it again because sometimes you apply for so much application, then sometimes you can't find the videos or they all mixed up, or you finish, you think, oh, you finish with this and then you delete it, or you have so much space and you delete it and you can't find them. So it's important to be aware of the documentation and where they are, like having a proper file, profiling your work. It's very important. So you can always
Mm.
go back and build on it.
Mm.
Yeah, even phone footage. I always make a joke. This one's for the acquittal, but it's true. It's like if you've got people and bodies in a room doing something creative, make sure you're
Mm.
taking photos and video. Like Lucky said, it's just so important to building that portfolio.
Mm. Definitely. Oh, thank you so much, Lucky. Thank you so much, Nola. Next slide, please. So, uh, if there's any questions or any information that you wanted to seek and reach out definitely give Create New South Wales a call. The details are on the screen there, but you can find the help guide by going onto the funding and support tab on the Create New South Wales website and just find the How to Apply guide and fact sheet page. So I wanted to just really express my thanks and gratitude. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you so much for our Ausland interpreters. Really appreciate your work. The Create New South Wales team also who are working behind the scenes and their amazing work. But most of all, just really thank you again to Nuala and Lucky for sharing their knowledge and being here with us. It's just really greatly appreciated.
Thanks,
Thank
Ian.
you.
No worries. Well, have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.